Welcome to the second video on how to improve your memory. In this video I'm going to cover a system called the major system, and this will be very useful to you if you want to remember a large number of pieces of information. You may remember in the first video I covered really the basics of memory improvement techniques. One of those basics was imagination, the importance of imagination in coming up with mental images which will allow you to make associations that make things easy to remember. And a couple of other points on imagination were that it helps if your images are of people, and it helps if your images are of people performing actions. Now, the major system is over 300 years old and is really the best system for remembering a large number of pieces of information. In the 3 centuries since the major system was invented, different variations on it have been used, but they basically all boil down to using a phonetic code. What this does is turns each of the numbers from 0 to 9 into a different letter sound. Is turn each of the numbers from 0 to 9 into a different letter sound. So, as you can see on the list here, some of the numbers have more than one letter associated with them, but those letters are grouped according to how they sound. So S and Z, or Z, actually sound very similar. It's a S sound or Z sound. Similarly with T and TH, and similarly with J and the sh and ch sounds for 6, and the same for 7, 8 and 9. You just have to put in the work first in remembering these associations, this code, in order to use the system, and it will take you a little while to learn this code. Some of the things that might help you remember is N for 2. N has 2 downstrokes in it, and M for 3. M has 3 downstrokes, 3 main downstrokes. R for 4. R is the last letter in the word for. So those are just a few little hints for those 3. But otherwise you'll have to come up with your own ways of remembering the other codes. Now, once you have memorized those 9 letter associations, what you then need to do is get a piece of paper and draw out a grid similar to this. Now, this may be too small for you to read from, but basically what I've done here is we've got the numbers 0 to 9 across the top, and then the same down the side here, although I haven't included 0 on the side one. Underneath each number I've written the letter associations, and the same down the side. What this gives us is 100 different little spaces in our grid, which will allow us to memorize 100 items. And this is how it works. Basically, it's using a system of coordinates. This little section in the grid here is basically 0, 0. Or, as I haven't included a 0 down the column side here, just 0 on its own. This space here would be 4, 3 or 43. This space here would be 6, 9 or 69. Then what you need to do is, for each of these spaces, which obviously has a number between 1 or 0 and 100, what you need to do is take the first letter from the first number and the letter from the second number. So for example, if you had 61, you've got the ch sound and the t or d sound. So 61 could be J, D, or sh, T, or sh, D. Now you will need to turn this then into a word. So you might like to jot this down or just think about it perhaps. What comes to mind when you see the letter J and then the letter T or D? JD, for example, might most easily associate in your mind with Jack Daniels, the drink. Basically use whatever association comes to your mind most easily, and then you can have a different association for each of these 100 little cubes. And then if anyone says to you what is your association with any particular number, you should be able to very quickly work it out, because you can remember the code of that number, the letter code of that number, and what is your association with that letter code. One tip to using this is it can be a good idea to change the letter codes into people, because as we've covered before, it's easier to remember people and easier to remember people performing actions. Okay, so now you've got 100 different mental images which you can easily remember which number they are associated with. What you then have is a system of basically 100 spaces into which you can remember 100 things. So say for example you had 100 facts to remember. What you need to do is place each fact at a particular block in your grid of 100, and then associate that fact with your mental image for each of those blocks. And again, as we covered in video 1, you'll need to make your associations as vivid and as strong in your mind as possible so that they become more memorable. And the beauty of this system is that you don't have to be able to go through each and every single association in order to get to any of the other ones, because you can just jump to whichever number it is in, or you can also count through them in your mind if you want to review all the different facts that you've memorized, so you know that 0 will be a particular word, 1 will be a particular word, and those will trigger your memory associations. So really spend a little time in first memorizing the phonetic code, then draw out this grid, put the letters next to each number, work out what your memory association will be with each of the 100 spaces,